Right then, okay people, so yet another day and again another Yamaha video. We seem to be having an absolute bout of old Yamahas recently. They're absolutely all over the place. There's a Bruin there, we had a Big Bear, Kodiak, and now it's another Kodiak. This one is the generation before that one, that's an 02, and this is a 1998. So this came in as a part exchange again. This came in on quite a nice bike we had that we haven't shown on film. I did do a video on it, but he wasn't too keen on it being on the internet. So whether I put that up in a few months' time, once he's forgot about it, I don't know. So the story with this has been sitting for 8 years, I believe. It was running absolutely fine until he came to it one day and it would not start. Now he said that he did a lot to it to try and get it running. He replaced the coil apparently. If we look down here, it has got what appears to be a fairly fresh coil. I would say that is probably about 8 years old. He said he claimed he cleaned the carburetor out, but I don't really believe it because I've cleaned it myself today and it was absolutely rancid. Now as soon as I got it back last night, I took all the carb off, etc., and the tank and the airbox. And I used some of the good old easy start in it and it started straight up instantly. And it ran for a good 30 seconds with me spraying some easy start into it. So I'm pretty confident this engine is good. It's going to be a carburetor problem. Now he did say he didn't take the tank off. And if we have a look at the tank over here, it's got the typical problem that old Yamahas suffer with, and that the fuel little cover over the fuel gauge is rotted off. These plastic covers and they get highly damaged by UV light. If we look at the Kodiak over here, this is at an earlier stage of its disintegration. As you can see, it's very oxidized. Give that another 10 years and that'll be the same as that one. You can save it by using the plastic restore sort of oil regeneration stuff. That will save that one will become clear again. But this one is obviously disintegrated. Now most people do nothing when these disintegrate, and as you can see there's two tiny little vent hoses in this tank, and obviously they get full of water. And when I drained this tank, it had been sitting indoors all this time, and it was absolutely full of mouldy petrol-y water solution. It was gross. So I'm hoping the only issue with it is that he didn't take the tank off and the tank was full of water. I've got a carb here to show you. This is off an identical bike out of my parts bin. So if I come over to the bench, it's a Mikuni. I don't think it has the stamp on it to say what it is, just R4 in there, as you can see. I did have a chap asking me in the comments on the Big Bear video, I think, about these Mikuni Carburetors because he had a Chinese one on, which are junk. So the Mikuni carburetors, I'm not sure what model it is, but you'd be able to find it on a Yamaha parts diagram. But they've all got these pull-out chokes on the side, old style, one setting choke, and they've all got this larger, more complex style throttle assembly. And they all are supposed to have, on these old Kodiaks and Big Bears, a steel slider in the centre, not a plastic one, which a lot of the Chinese ones have. So this is a genuine Mikuni. This has been in the parts bin a long, long time. I think from memory, I think the only problem with it is that the bowl has snapped. Now, these use little tiny arms on the bowl to actually connect it to this little pin here, and they obviously disintegrate over time. Now, this carburetor will probably work fine with the rebuild if you want it. I can't find your comment, whoever you are. But you can have it for 20 quid if you want it, and I'll ship it wherever you are. It can't be that expensive anywhere in the world. But on that, I've cleaned out all the jets on the carburetor. I took the main jet out and cleaned it. I cleaned the secondary jet in there. And I checked the slider on that one, and it all seemed to operate as it should. And I've put it back on. As I say, I've cleaned the tank out completely and dried it out. The petcock here was also blocked with some pretty nasty stuff, but that's all cleaned out now, so that should operate correctly. So I'm going to stick this back on, put the tank back on, and I'm going to run and get some fuel to try in it. The other problem with it, well, I haven't been over it completely, but it's got a couple of issues. One is, for some reason the solenoid went out on it, and rather than just replace the solenoid, he put this horrible janky aftermarket solution on. Now, why anybody would do that, I don't know, because the solenoids are dirt cheap. They're like a tenner. The start button still operates, because as you can see, that's the light that comes on when you start it. So, provided I get it running, all I should have to do is trace the power wire back and put a fresh solenoid on. I haven't been over it too much, but I don't think there's a hell of a lot wrong with it. This exhaust is rotten here, look. There's the piece that's come off it, that's the lead. So I'll need a pipe welding in. It will actually clean up very nicely. With some powder coated racks and wheels and plastics gone over it, it will look quite fresh. The tyres are very good on it. They're old. If we go on to the back, what's the date on these? Can we see? Yeah, week 38, 2001. And as you can see, they've still got pretty good tread, so I would say this bike's been barely touched in the last 20 years. Well, you know, not the last 20 years, but certainly a long time. It's not got too high miles on, it's got 7,800. The other problem with it, the big problem, is that the prop shaft is missing for the front, so I'll have to get one of them installed. But yeah, I'm going to put the tank on, get some fuel, and I'll be back. Okay, so it's a bit later in the day now. As you can see, the mist has started to come down on the farm. You can tell it's a December afternoon, can you? But anyway, she's a runner. I've got the carb all put back on, tank's back on. There's fresh fuel in here, and I'll show you it running now. I'll have to use this horrible janky solenoid bypass, but starts up very easy, catastrophically loud because the exhaust terminates right in the middle there. But it's been an hour or so since it's running. It actually goes pretty well, and I've driven it a couple of miles down the road, and I can tell you that high range works, low range works, and reverse works through all 5 gears. So that's a little bit of a result. I've got it jacked up on the front end now, because as I've said in previous videos, the thing that kills these financially when they get a bit older is the ball joints. The A-arms, you cannot replace the ball joints without replacing the entire A-arm. And in the UK at least, there's nowhere to get those A-arms from except from the Yamaha dealer. And they're £180 each. So if all 4 ball joints were no good, you'd be talking almost, well, you'd be talking 800 quid almost. If you're in the US, you're lucky, because Caltrick will sell you one for 40 quid, but they won't ship it to the UK. But luckily on this, every single ball joint is tight. As you probably expect from the mileage, you won't be able to tell me doing this, but this one has no play at all in any of the ball joints. The only bit of play I can find on the entire front end is this wheel bearing, which isn't terrible, but there is a bit of play in it. Everything else is fine. As I say, luckily this has been sat for a long time, so it's not really been driven that much, so all the bushes and bearings are alright. Track rods are all fine, suspension and A-arm bushes are fine, it's just one wheel bearing, that is it. The front brakes have pressure in them. Now I've adjusted the adjuster screw all the way in. They have pressure, but they're not doing anything basically. So I suggest the drums need adjusting or possibly going through completely. I hope I don't have to go through them completely. The battery looks like it's taken a little bit of a charge because the lights were still on after I turned it off. So that may be salvageable, but in all likelihood we'll have to put a new battery on it. The rear brake I've freed off. You can see the cable is now moving in and out as it should. I've adjusted the foot brake, and the foot brake actually works quite well. The mechanism at the back is free. All I've got to do is adjust up this handbrake cable so that it actually works. The rear end seems fine. I did notice this shock is a little bit off centre. I'm not sure if it's come out of the bushing or what, but I'll have to have a look at that. Obviously it needs a good paint up and powder coating, but overall it doesn't look half bad. The oil in it is pretty clean. It's on the full mark, as I'll show you now. You can barely even see. It's pretty golden. Obviously I'll change it. We need to put an air filter in it because it's only got the foam element, not the mesh. Seat needs a recover. So yeah, it's definitely a viable option to sort this out. This bike will look very fresh when it's done because the plastics are all clean. There's a slight bend in the rack, but we can easily bend that back. And it will be about 2,200 in really tidy nick, this will, if we put a brand new prop on it and sort all the little issues that I've gone over. I have got a lot on at the minute though. I'm only one person on my own. If anyone wants it, they can have it for 1,200 if they want a little Christmas project. That's probably going to be too expensive for what it is for most people, but that's what it's worth to me. Let's turn that fuel valve off. We've got a slight drip. So yeah, it's overall pretty damn good for what we expected. I didn't expect this to run. I expected it to be a right nightmare to get going, and I expected to probably just export it because that's where the bad ones go. But no, it's actually quite a clean little bike. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. I'll leave it for a week, see if anybody's interested in it. Otherwise, I'm going to order all the parts up, and you'll see another video of putting the new prop on and getting it all 100%. So yeah, I'll see you in the next one.